Hello guys and welcome back to Eyes on the Ball. Welcome to my round 16 tips video. So last buy round, which is good because it's always better once you pass the buy rounds, given it's always not fun having less games on, as the more footy you can watch the better. And yeah, basically got a top 9 who can play finals. The other 9 in the comp you would rule out of finals, and I think the finals are pretty set already. Which is surprising given we're only 15 rounds in, but should be another exciting round of footy. Some good games, but also some pretty one-sided games. But yeah, should be a decent round after a not too bad round last week. Wasn't a great round. Expansion Cup was probably the best game, but yeah, not a bad round. Last week I got 1 out of 7 Oz calls, and I got 4 out of 7 tips. So my tips last week weren't too good, but not too bad either. Or not great in general. Actually, they weren't good. First game, Freo Essendon. Freo won by 41. I said 28, so margin wasn't too bad. One of my 4 tips for the round. Now I said Geelong. Brisbane won quite easily in the end in a pretty big upset. Then North Melbourne upset the Blues. Sydney probably upset Port Adelaide, and then Collingwood beat St Kilda on the Saturday night, which you would expect, and then another 2 tips right, so I got the last 3 tips of the round right. GWS v Gold Coast. GWS got up in a comeback win. Western Bulldogs v Richmond. Bulldogs got up pretty easily, and teams that had the bye were Adelaide, Hawthorn, Melbourne and West Coast. Moving on to my tips, first game of the round should be a pretty good game. Got Carlton v Port Adelaide, Adelaide Oval, 7:30pm Thursday night. Port Adelaide 6 and 8. Last week lost to Sydney by 19. Wasn't a great performance, especially losing at home to a team that they had already beat this year and hasn't really been playing any better than them. But Sydney do have potential to play well when they want to, and Saturday was obviously one of those days. And then you've got Carlton coming off a loss to North Melbourne by 11. 6 and 8, both teams 6 and 8. So whoever loses this, season over. I feel like this could really go either way. Blues have won at the Adelaide Oval before against Port Adelaide, I think last year maybe, or the year before. And they both teams can play well when they want to, but this year both haven't been playing their best, and it really could go either way. But I reckon the Blues will get up in this one by 13 points, with my Oz call Carlton kick 90 plus points. Next game on the Friday night, the SCG, we've got Western Bulldogs v Sydney. Sydney record of 6 and 8. Last week beat Port Adelaide by 19. It was a pretty good performance. They did have Errol Goulden back, which always helps. It was probably their best performance so far this season, I would say. And yeah, it was pretty good performance. Really got their form back of how they were playing last year. Obviously made the grand final, but this year haven't really played that well. And then we've got the Bulldogs, 8 and 6. Last week lost to GW. Last week they beat Richmond by 79. It was a pretty good performance from the Bulldogs. It was a pretty convincing win, and you'd expect that though. Given Richmond are one of the weaker sides in the comp, and the Bulldogs do tend to beat up the bad sides. But yeah, still a pretty complete performance, and Sam Darcy returned to form, so they're 2 good positives for the Bulldogs. At the SCG, always think the Swans could be a chance, but Bulldogs should get up in this one. I'm going to tip them by 21 with my Oz call that Sam Darcy kicks 4 plus goals. Next game, Gold Coast v Melbourne, People First Stadium, 1:20pm Saturday. Gold Coast record of 8 and 5. Last week lost to GWS by 7. Such a good first quarter, and even first 3 quarters. They just shut off in the last quarter. GWS, I think, kicked 8 goals, ended up getting the win. It was a pretty good performance in the end from GWS in that last quarter, but one you definitely wanted to win from the Suns. Then you got Melbourne 5 and 9 coming off the bye. Before that, coming off a loss, so they're not going great. But you would have expected that at the start of the season. Did lose to Port Adelaide in Adelaide, so always hard to play well there. These teams have already played this season, and I think Gold Coast won by about 60 points. So I reckon Gold Coast are going to win by similar 51 points, and my Oz called Melbourne kick less than 60 points. Then Saturday twilight game, 4:15pm, Saturday at UTAS. Got Hawks v North. Second Hawks game at UTAS in a row. Hawks are 9-5 last week, had the bye. The week before that, at UTAS, they beat the Crows in a pretty low-scoring, bad-quality game. But it was a pretty good win for the Hawks after beating the Bulldogs the week before. So they have hit a bit of form, getting back into form. This game will be crucial to ensuring keeping their chances up of a top 4 spot, as they are currently sitting 5th, just outside the top 4. And then North, 4-1-9 last week, beat Carlton by 11. They're really in form lately. At one point they were like 1-8 or something like that, but since then they have beat Richmond and have beat West Coast, have beat Carlton, got the draw to Brisbane, a couple of tough losses, so they have really hit form, and I can see them winning a few more games. But I think Hawks don't usually lose at UTAS. I think they'll be a bit too strong for North in this one. Going to win by 26, and the Oz called John Newcombe has 25 plus disposals. Then the Saturday night game got Collingwood v West Coast at Marvel Stadium. Collingwood, with a record of 12-2, last week beat St Kilda by 34. It was a pretty brave performance by St Kilda for the first 3 quarters, but you always knew Collingwood were going to run over the top of them in the end, and they did end up being the better side, winning pretty comfortably in the end. Then you got West Coast 1-13 coming off the bye. The week before that, they played Carlton in Perth. They did get blown out of the water in the first quarter, but then next 3 quarters weren't too bad. But you'd expect this would be pretty one-sided, being first v 18th, and I think it will be. I'm going to tip Collingwood by 61, with my Ollie's call that West Coast score less than 10 points in the first quarter. And then the next game we've got is Richmond v Adelaide, MCG, 3:20pm Sunday. Richmond, a record of 3-11 last week, lost to Western Bulldogs by 79. So, it wasn't a great performance, but you would expect that. They were down by quite a bit at half-time, so they did recover a bit in the second half, but still not a great performance. Then the Crows, 9-5, coming off the bye. Week before that, had a tough loss to Hawthorn at UTAS. So, as in, they should still definitely make finals. If they win this, I'd lock them in for finals, but they are currently sitting 4th with a game in hand on Brisbane and Geelong, so really saying they could push even for top 2 if they can win some close games where they have lost. So I reckon Adelaide should win this one pretty comfortably. I don't think they play too well at the MCG after losing to Collingwood a couple of times. They did beat Essendon earlier this year, but I think Adelaide should win this one pretty comfortably by 47 points. And my Oz call Thilthorpe, Walker and Fogarty combined for 9 plus goals. Then the final game of the round got St Kilda v Freo, Optus Stadium, 5:10pm Sunday. It feels like about 3 weeks ago the last time these sides played. Saints in that one won by about 60 points, and it was a pretty big win from the Saints, but I think Freo have only lost 1 match since then, and the Saints have only won 1. So the trajectory of these sides, I think they're both 4-4 after that match, and now they're 9-5 and 5-9. So Freo 9-5 beat Essendon by 41. Their form's been on a resurgence, as in they beat Port Adelaide and teams like Port Adelaide and Essendon in Perth, which you expect them to beat, but then they've also had good wins over Gold Coast, close win over North, and a pretty good win over GWS. So they are racking up the wins and really pushing for finals, which people expected at the start of the year, but then they did drop off a bit, and looks like they might miss finals. And then you got the Saints, 5-9, last week beat Collingwood by 34. Not beat Collingwood, lost to Collingwood by 34. It was a really promising performance in the first 3 quarters, and you always knew we were going to drop off and end up losing, but we showed some signs, so I wasn't too unhappy with our performance. But in Perth, we did beat them by 60, we've played them this year, but I can't see that happening again. I think they're going to win by 39. Freo, and my other Collins Wang and Emilio has 25 plus disposals. So, just to recap, on my tips for the round. First game, I tipped Carlton in an upset, and I reckon they'll win pretty close margin, 13 points away at the Adelaide Oval. Then I'm going to go the Bulldogs to beat the Swans at the SCG, which you'd expect. Then some pretty easy games to tip. Gold Coast should easily beat Melbourne. Hawks should get up over North, and then Collingwood should beat West Coast. And then on the Sunday, two pretty easy games as well. Adelaide should beat Richmond. Freo should beat St Kilda. And then we've got the buys for the round. Brisbane, Essendon, Geelong and GWS. So those are my tips for round 16. Thanks for watching Eyes on the Ball. I hope you enjoyed another tips video. And if you do enjoy the content, you can like and subscribe, but you don't have to. But it would really help out the channel. But anyways, thanks for watching and see you next time.